Welcome to Honestly Speaking, a safe place to be unsafe. Life commentary and dialogue from a biblical, logical, cultural, and comical perspective.
What up, everybody? As per usual, it's your girl from Honestly Speaking. How are you doing? Hopefully, you have a community that you're pouring into and one that is pouring into you. I mean, before I get started on this week, how about we have the illustrious co-workers, co-facilitators, co-laborers on the Honestly Speaking podcast, live, vlog, whatever you want to call it, introduce themselves. Crystal Clear.
Hi, everybody. It's Crystal Clear.
And none other than...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Coco King.
Oh, you should have added an echo. King.
That's what I got my co-host for. Yeah.
I see we have a couple of people looking out now. Tell us where you're from and where you're watching. To those who are watching, so much has happened this week. Grace and peace. Lyrically outspoken. Grace and peace, good brother. Where are people calling in from? I do know I have a couple of people that are gonna be tapping in from all over. Speaking of which, Richmond. That's what's up. I have family in Richmond. And Newport News. I only knew that from the cigarettes, the Newports. I remember finding out like it's really a place called Newport. But anyway,
How y'all holding up with these allergies out there? Like,
I'm done.
What's going on? Like, what you taking?
Zyrtec.
I'm taking it one day at a time.
One day at a time. That's right. I know with me this week, I pulled my back. Somebody said, "What did you do to pull your back?" I'm like, I'm just in my 40s. Like I didn't. I just sat down, and that was it. And that was it. Like it's nothing. Like I didn't do anything. I was bedridden. I had people checking on me. You know when you just don't care when something happens. Like my phone fell, and I was like, how? I thought to myself, how if something happened, how would I call 911? And that pain hit. I was like, just leave it. Lord, I think I'm right with you. If you take me, you start thinking of things like, look, if something happened and they find me like this, I started thinking, do I have too many dirty clothes out? If somebody was to come to my house and find me, all kinds of stuff goes through my head. So,
like, if anybody came to your house to find you, we would even care what's in your house. We would care about dirty clothes. Are you serious?
Oh, I care about that. In fact,
so you mean to say? I'm telling you right now, okay? You mean to say if you coming to check on me, you care about the dirty clothes?
No, I don't. But I know that there are petty people who love me, but will see me differently. Let me tell you. Now, for those who are watching this, do you all have any weird rituals that you do before you go on a trip? So I travel a lot. One of the things I do, number one, I try to make sure my bed is made up all the time. But I don't want any dirty clothes in my hamper when I travel, because God forbid something happen and I pass away. I don't want anybody to have to wash my dirty clothes.
Ooh, first of all, I'm saying this. I actually don't wash my clothes because when I come back, I'm going to wash everything that I took with me. So, but I just have personal daily habits of cleaning and organizing. Like, what they call maintenance cleaning. So that if
She's not calling me dirty regular. Is she low key calling me dirty regularly? You say regularly dirty. Like, I don't know about you, but if it stay clean, it ain't gotta get clean.
So wait, how is it that you feel like somebody's about to wash your clothes when we're mourning your death?
Because people do that, and then they
are man. Like, what are you talking about?
And then they start humming and folding stuff.
Right. Like I know who my friends are. Let me tell you this. Some of my clothes, people would want them. You know what I mean? So I think about
What
that.
you trying to say? What you trying to say, honestly?
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I'm
It's partially looking out. I'm just looking out for people to an extent. For real, for real. But yeah, thank you, Miss K Johnson, always keeping us on point as per usual. Always keeping us on point. Yeah, today we are going to be talking about sex. We are. And just really quick, and I see Andrea Sam said, hey, from Houston, Texas. Hey, Andrea from Houston, Texas.
Thanks for tapping in.
That's right. Thank you for tapping in. We are going to be talking about sex today. We're going to be doing it respectfully. We're going to be doing it in a mature way. It may be some jokes here and there, but those of you know, honestly speaking, we have a variety of hopes. Not everyone is Christian, not everyone is saved, but we do have a base level of morality that we all agree to. So I know I will be coming from a lot of Christian perspectives, as well as a lot of singles perspectives. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be reviewing a survey that we put out. We put out actually a couple of days ago, and we had about 60 people or so respond to it. And it's just basically a survey that talks about just what is sex, and not even what is it, but how we think about sex. How we think about sex as a society. What are some of the things that impact sex, and given certain demographics? So the reason why man, listen, the reason why we are going to talk about this is because we've noticed that sex has a huge impact on not just our actual being, but on us as a society. So, Chris, is there anything that you wanted to add to that? I know you said you wanted to talk briefly about a few things.
I think so. Lee says she'll obviously be coming. Obviously, I'll be coming from a biblical perspective too, but also coming from a biblical, comical, cultural perspective. But no, like a logical um, perspective of what are the liabilities and some of the ways that we and that we are indoctrinated, the ways we influence, especially when it comes to the next generation and minors.
Hmm.
And yeah, so that's kind of like where I am. Like when I think about this subject, I remember preparing for puberty for my son, and when I think about this subject, I feel like the the root authenticity of sex has been lost. Like the reason why it was created, the beauty of it, like everything's been perverted from our anatomy to the act. It's just and it's become so common that we don't even see the perversion. Like we don't even see how it's been
Hmm.
manipulated and changed.
Right.
So I definitely want to talk about deconstructing why you think what you think. Don't think some things that you probably should think about things.
Hmm. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Shout out to Morgan Liz who's watching. Morgan, what it do? What it do?
Oh, Morgan!
So Cole and I will basically be asking, going back and forth, asking you all and even Crystal Clear some questions. So without further ado, I'm just going to pull up the survey here. Now, while I'm pulling up the survey, put in the chat, what are some of the things that come to your mind when you all think of sex and society? And remember, this is a safe place to be unsafe, but please keep it, respectable. All right.
Close to PG-13.
Yeah. Yeah. You could say PG-13 because nowadays PG-13, they show everything. Like,
Girl.
man. But anyway, what comes to mind? And for those who are watching on Facebook too, what comes to mind? While I look this up. And if y'all want to talk on what comes to your mind, Coco or Crystal, have at it.
Go ahead, King.
Huh?
I said, go ahead.
What comes to mind? Mass confusion.
Mm.
Speak more to that. What do you mean by that?
So prior to ever engaging in sex, you have a perception of sex, and when you engage in sex, you find out that your perception of sex is completely like off,
Mm,
not what you expected. This isn't how this works. This isn't how any of this works. Like
right.
totally different. I know at least that's what it was for me. Maybe some people it probably matched up, but then the good old peaches and cream.
Dirty. But in reality, no, but it's funny you say that because I remember hearing that first from a song, right?
Mhm.
Like first from the song, the 112 song. I really didn't, I knew it was something suggestive, but I didn't know exactly what it meant or could it even imply. To be honest, when I listen to some songs now, I still don't know what it implies, but I know the spirit behind the song is like, yeah, that's not right. That's that's
Right.
that's definitely not right. And I
Yeah.
think there's something else that we do in our society that hypersexualizes us. We have this thing that we do like called pause. When someone says something that could be remotely
Right.
sexual, you'll hear someone say pause. And it started out with guys who didn't want to sound like they were coming off in a homosexual manner. And then it kind of spread out to people saying a bunch of other things. So just like I said, it started out with guys and then it kind of spread out. Somebody could say pause. And then your
Right.
brain would have to think, how could that even be taken in a sexual way? And then you kind of get it. So it makes you hyper aware of sexual possibilities in certain conversations. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that pause was like cross cultural. Because I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know what pause was. My friends just always say pause when I talk. And at some point, eventually, I had to figure out why they were saying pause when I talk.
Like,
Uh,
yeah, some
but
point,
then
like,
recently, I was hanging out with some other friends and coworkers, and they came up with the pause. They came out with the pause. It was guys, by the way. I don't know what it is with men and pause, but and I was just like, so pause is just everywhere. Everybody says pause.
well, it's had time to grow and take on a life of its own. Because, I mean, we talking about 10+ years when we started saying it in our, our communities. So if you see people outside of the community saying it, I'm sure it's what's going on? Is there a feedback?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
think so.
I don't know. Do you hear like a loud pitch?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that a little bit too. Give me 1 second. I'm going to mute myself. I don't know if it's me or not.
It is you. I mean, faces. We can all make them. Make a face, Crystal. Oh man.
You were saying, Marcus.
As I was saying about the pause being cross cultural, yes, I believe by now it's across all cultures. I would not be shocked if anyone said it because it's been around for a while. The funniest person to say pause to me ever has been the one honestly speaking because we're talking about something that I'm very serious and having a whole conversation being a grown up. And who's being a juvenile? Miss Honest-Leigh. I'm explaining something, and she go, "Hold, pause." I'm like, really, really, right now?
I think sometimes it can be used to lighten up the moment.
Mhm.
Sometimes I have to
She
repent
is the queen of
after I
pause.
say it. What do you say, Crystal?
I said she is the queen of pause, though.
Um, I think
But
sometimes I gotta repent after I say it though. I do. It's kind of like a "that's what she said." It's like that. It's kind of like a "that's what she said" joke.
what's that? That's what she said.
Yeah.
Oh,
Pause. All
all
right.
right.
So we're gonna review this survey really quick, folks. So it was 60 people that took it. As you see, we had one Asian female, ages 26 to 40. We had one Black female, 18 to 25. We had, I'm not going to go through all the ages, but it was one Asian, one 12. What is that?
112.
No, I'm
There's
counting.
12?
1 plus 11, please. 1 plus 11 is 12. Plus 16, what is that? 28. Yeah, is 28 Black females. Then you had a number of Black males. We had some Caucasian females. We had one Caucasian male. Shout out to you, sir. And to the other folks, because sometimes people don't like being classified in certain terms. Like, for instance, I was sent this to one of my friends who's a doctor, PhD, and she does a lot of research. And one of the things she said was, you classify Caucasian as race. And now the person that wanted the prideful person in me was just like, I never listed race, and I didn't. I never said race. I said, how do you identify? So it gives people the opportunity to identify as something else. However, there are certain things that need to be taken into consideration in future studies. So again, you see we have a number of people here. So it shows you that majority of the people that took this were African Americans, mainly African American females. So I want to say it was over 50% African American females that took it. Or I'm sorry, over 50% African Americans that took it. So the first question, I'll ask this one. And I want to know in the chat, for those who are watching, really quick, did your parents talk to you about sex when you were growing up? So here are the responses. Yes, often. Out of 60 people, almost 7% said yes and often. 15% said somewhat. 31% said yes, but barely. Look at this. 45% said no. And then you have about 3% said that they learned, they were taught about sex from another adult who helped to raise them. And so because we don't have necessarily any circumstances when it comes to that, I can't say, well, the parent didn't, because we don't know what their, life circumstances was growing up. So really quick, what do y'all say about that? Did y'all parents talk to you about sex growing up?
No.
I
learned that I didn't learn about sex from my parents. I didn't learn about where babies come from my parents. All of those things happen very traumatically, usually at school during gym. Yeah.
Wow. What about you, Coco?
Yeah, no conversations one way or another about sex, the birds and the bees, the balls dropping, none of that. The voice changing, no manly perspective, nothing.
Well, I did. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cole.
Yeah, I didn't learn where babies came from until I actually made a baby. So I don't know anything about none of this stuff for real. I'm still trying to learn and figure it out as we go along.
All right. So I learned, my mom did teach me. My mom didn't say anything, they say stuff in your family. Don't be out here being fresh. That's what you learn. Don't be fresh. You're like, what? But my mom did teach me. Not only did she teach me about, and she taught me, it wasn't just one talk, it was several talks. I think that's also important, that when we have certain conversations, it needs to be several talks. It wasn't just one talk, it was several, and it wasn't too many. When you're a kid, a part of you is just like, I don't want to talk about this. You know what I mean? But I was very grateful for it. She taught me, she had conversations with me about good touch, bad touch. That was very, very beneficial. Yeah. When we had certain conversations, she, a lot of times parents give like nicknames or colloquialisms to children's private areas, and that's okay. But you should also teach the kids the actual name for whatever private area you're talking about. And it's sad, but it's actually for legal reasons. It's sad, but it's actually for legal reasons. Let's see what brother Chris said. He said, all I got was, boy, don't you get one of them nappy-headed heifers pregnant. Dang. Dang.
I wasn't even allowed to say pregnant.
You weren't even allowed to say pregnant?
Yeah.
Wow. And I see that Sister Andrea said, nope, my parents didn't talk about it at all. Acted like it didn't exist, and no possibility of me exploring it at all. Yeah. Yeah, so we see that certain people have certain responses. And again, just going back to when you talk to children about their body parts, it's okay to have, nicknames for things. But for legal reasons, you should teach them the actual name, because God forbid something happens. There has been cases in the past where people have gotten off of being prosecuted, sex offenders, because the child couldn't name the actual part of their body that the person touched. And I think that that's extremely important.
I'm extremely sad.
It is.
It's malarkey. It's malarkey.
It is malarkey. But this is how the system works, and I think it's important. Yep. I wasn't even doing nothing. Okay. So we see that there's a lot that goes into play, and I think a number of things go into that. Why do y'all think that parents don't want to have the conversation with their children? I know that's not one of the questions, and then after that, Coco, you'll take the next question. What the next bullet? But why do y'all think, in the chat, Chris, why do you think that parents don't talk to children about it?
I don't think that they don't want to. I think there's a certain, like, I joked about not knowing where babies came from until I made a baby, but I think there's a certain level of ignorance and inadequacy that we have, that parents have, and they weren't presented sex in a healthy manner, so they don't even know how to present it to their children. So I think they ponder it, they try to wait for the right time, and then the right time is their kids are getting married and having kids and it's over with, or something like that. So I don't think that they intentionally shy away from it. I think that there's a certain level of courage that comes with it that's just lacking from a lack of knowledge, in my opinion.
Right. I think I would say the same thing. I think that the culture has made it, and at one point in time, the culture made it so that it was like hush. Like it was the thing that you didn't talk about. It was private. It was between married people. Yeah, which is it's crazy because the way we are as humans and the way our bodies develop physically, at some point within your childhood, you are transitioning physically into adult body parts. So that alone is reason for a conversation. Um, yeah, I think I agree with Coco. It's uncomfortable. Much like when we were talking about grief and how we avoid grief because the pain and because it's uncomfortable. I think it's uncomfortable to talk to a child about a subject that you may yourself never have been talked to about. You just ended up acting on it at some point, and now it's like this private thing that you don't talk about. So.
Yeah, I also think it's because we made sex dirty.
Make it dirty.
Yeah. I think it's because we've made the act of sex itself something that is nasty. We've perverted it. And even as Christians, we see it as this sacred thing, and at the same time, we see it as this gross thing, because we're often not taught how to be a steward over it. Chris, can you see this? Can you read that? While I pull up the other thing.
Well, my parents were very traditional. My mom knew we were taught in school. Third grade sex said, I didn't have a dad to talk to me about those things at all. TV taught a lot of them. I can relate to that because I will say that there was a point in time where it was kind of unavoidable, and I was very ignorant. I'm going to be honest. I was very ignorant up well into middle school. Um, and I remember having to ask one of my parents something, and the response was they didn't teach you about that in health class, which is, as an adult now, I don't want anybody else teaching my child about anything in some class.
Right.
Like, especially not anything
Especially
that,
now.
right, especially now, and especially not anything that important, that major. But it again, I think that's one of the ways I think culture has affected things. In addition to we made it nasty or we made it something that it shouldn't be. I think at some point as a culture we kind of relinquished our God given power and authority or responsibilities in ways that we shouldn't have. And that I think is one of those ways.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, so let's get back to this. Shout out to you too, Cabrina. I see you watching. What up, sis? Um, so let's get back to the survey. The next question, question 3. At what age did you first learn about sex? Matter of fact, Coco, can you see this or no?
Yes, I can see it. I,
Gotcha.
I got it. At what age did you first learn about sex from a source other than your parents? We got 0 to 8, 10.
Yep.
Next one. Scroll over so I can see the 8. Oh, 9 to 12, 24. 13 to 16, 22. 17 to 21, 3. And 21 plus 1. That 0 to 8 is a little bit alarming. Even 9 to 12 is crazy, but what's going on 0 to 8?
I'm
What
going to
do
pull
we
down
have?
some. This one has room for comments, so I want you can review some of the comments if you want.
Just for hearing people talk in school? Okay.
Some of what Chris spoke about.
Right. I learned from childhood games like Catch a Girl, Get a Girl. I also learned
Mm-hmm.
the act of sex from hearing my parents in porn stations from cable TV.
This
Let's
person
talk,
was honest.
let's talk about Catch a Girl, Get a Girl. Where and how did our young minds even process that to play that and also play house, where there was a mom, a dad, and we had one of our friends play our baby? Like,
Yep.
I mean, it's
And honestly, that is actually developmentally appropriate. It's called pretend play. So children go through a stage where they imitate whatever they see. And so if you are living a home with a mom and a dad, you imitate what the home has. Now, if you doing some other stuff, then you shouldn't be seeing that. Which is why oftentimes, if kids go in a different direction, then there's some questions that you need to be asking about what they're being exposed to. But the mom, dad, the baby, that all kind of makes sense, actually.
all
But
right.
that catch a girl, get a girl, I don't know what pit of hell that game came from.
Hide and go get it. My man put that in the comments.
Hide and go get it. Big K said that's what they were playing. They were playing hide and go get it.
Yo,
And
so
it's so crazy how that teaches young men to be predatory,
Mm,
right? Not necessarily pursuers, but
mm,
predatory. And that is a difference between pursuing and get, like, do you understand what I'm saying? It makes you,
yeah,
it
yeah,
taps into one's it taps into one's, I want to say, like, base human nature of like survival. So men are hunters anyway. So it's like I gotta go hunt and get this, vagina.
right,
So I think that it's tapping into certain things that we don't necessarily consider.
right. I think it makes it almost animalistic. But
That's what I mean.
if I'm being honest, what we've done or allowed as a culture almost makes it animalistic. It's like sport. So
Right. This is an interesting one, and this comment is not one that I intend to believe, but hey, they said it, so take it for face value. Self-taught. No one has ever talked to me about sex. No one's ever talked to you about sex, but I don't believe you're completely self-taught. You had to get your ideas and perceptions about sex from somewhere. You didn't just wake up and say, I have an organ, I'm going to figure out how to use it, whether man, woman, or whatever you are. Like, it doesn't work that way. You get urges, you get feelings, but you just aren't going to just be like, there's no innate like blueprint in your head, like, okay, this is what I have to do.
Wait a minute. Chris, you telling me that growing up, the boys would hide and the girls would go get it? Man, oh man, that was different. That was, Go, you ever play like that?
Oh,
what you talking about? Where did I say that at?
it's in the comments.
Chris, look on the screen, look on the big screen. Chris put that in there, like where he's from. That's what happened. What?
No, I never.
What?
No.
Man, that is different.
It explains a lot of the music we have today.
It does. Where I'm from, hide and catch. They literally catch a girl, get a girl. Wow. And my brother Berean, but wow, like that's wow. Okay. Wow. I was learned from the generation before. I think that many of us were. Many of us were. And so I'm going to move on to the next question. Right?
Wait. Can we highlight this one? Source, television. So I was talking recently about how TV changed, like over the years. Like, remember when it would fade out on the kiss? Like, or when you would watch TV shows and it was two beds in the bedroom and not one bed in the bedroom. Everything was like, you remember that? I remember that. Why?
I remember two beds being in the
Watch I Love Lucy episode. There was two beds in the bedroom.
In whose bed? In the parents' room?
Yes, and Desi and Lucy's bedroom.
No, that was like in 1748. Like, what are you
But that's what she watched.
That's what I. So I'm just saying,
that's what she was watching.
There was a distinctive change from the 80s and into the 90s.
Crystal, but to be fair, what you talked about was from the 40s.
Right.
Even in the 80s, when I watched the Cosby Show, Claire and Cliff wasn't being fresh. Like, you know what I mean?
They were insinuating, and he was talking about drugging her up. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. They was talking about that sauce. Remember, he was like, everybody who takes this sauce, you see what they want to do.
Okay.
And next thing you know, Rudy was trying to get the sauce with Bud, and he ran and grabbed the sauce like, you can't have none. So he like, they remember he put on that jazz album.
Yes, I remember.
And remember when they went to bed. Remember he was always insinuating, like when they got in the bed, like
right.
I'm just saying, okay, maybe insinuating, but now they flat out having like it's the stuff that used to come on after the snow at night on TV. Remember back regular TV?
What was you doing up there? Scary hours.
Remember it would have that moment where the flag would come up and the anthem, and then it would be snow, and then whatever come on after that, you was not
1-800 pick up the phone. Those commercials, those young ladies, 1-800 we are 18. Pick up the phone. I'm like,
now it's just on regular time TV. Like, it's just, anyway, but yeah, go ahead.
Pick up the phone.
Y'all remember that? All right, so I'm gonna keep it moving a little bit. This says, how would you classify your first sexual experience with another person? So we have 12%, 20% said positive, 58% said neutral. So take it or leave it. 8% said negative, 8% said traumatic. Almost 2% said not sure. And then we have some individuals who have never had sex with another person. All right. So when we think about this, here's where some data is going to come in. I think that, you know what? I'll wait till we talk about like virginity and things like that, because this also plays a huge part. But did any of these, any of this, the statistics, like jar you a bit or make you say, wow, to those who are watching, and also, of course, to my co-host?
No, I actually didn't expect neutral to be so high. I thought, honestly, I thought negative was going to be so higher than what it is, because most oftentimes when you talk to women, they talk about their initial sexual experiences being, well, I guess it's not negative, it's just like a letdown. So I guess maybe that's probably neutral more so than negative. So yeah, I think about it, but an initial, my first glance, I thought that neutral was kind of high.
Right.
And the fact that we have, this is the problem, and I know it's not abnormal, but the problem is we have any responses for traumatic. Like there shouldn't be traumatic experiences around someone's first time having sex.
It shouldn't. And you know but there is. And you know, for I know some people would say, well, that's only a small percentage. However, to Coco's point, it's a percentage. And that's not saying that the experience that you had afterwards wasn't traumatic. This is just talking about the first sexual experience that you had with someone else. So oftentimes it's not necessarily your first experience that's traumatic. It could be your third or your fifth or whatever, you know, whatever, when you get older, that could be traumatic as well. I think the statistics are 1 out of every 3 women have been sexually assaulted, and 1 out of every 4 to 5 men have been sexually assaulted. And the way that men and women perceive sexual assault is different. So the statistics for men could actually be similar to the ones for women. It's just that society doesn't even tell men that they've been sexually assaulted when something happens to them.
Right. And the statistics are only based on the reports.
Right. Which
So
means the women are more than likely higher. And there is a certain amount of normalizing sexual harassment that women just deal with.
right,
And yeah, yeah.
right.
All right. So I'm going to move to the next one. Coco, you can read it.
Haha. Do you think that pornography warps or distorts sexual expectations? Starting off with yes at 43.3%, somewhat 30%, not at all 11.6%. I think porn is positive is the shocker for me. 15% of our responses say they think porn is positive.
I'm also going to pull it down. So what do y'all think in the comments? Do you think that the answer, what are your answer to this question? Do you all think that pornography warps or distorts sexual expectations? And I'm going to pull down some of these responses for you.
Yeah, I would say pornography is part of what influences the whole sport mentality. Like it's entertainment.
Mm,
It, I said that it is part of what influences the sport, making it a sport mentality. It's entertainment. Like, I mean, let's think about porn. Like when I first of all, the fact that I was exposed to porn as a child, I don't like how common is it to just be exposed to porn as a child? And when you're exposed to it, it's all a show. Like it's literally a show. But as a child, you don't know it's a show. Like you don't know that it's being fabricated or it's being, enhanced. Like you don't know that. And I think it perpetuates an unhealthy expectation
mm.
of of pleasure, and it makes it self centered almost. Like how when you play a sport you want to win. Like who says I want to go play the sport for fun? You want to go and you want to win.
You know, Coke, did you want to say something to that? Or because I was going to say something that someone said to me that like helped really change the way I saw porn.
I do think it's Delusional. I don't think there's nothing positive that I could think of, like realistically, that came from it. It just fed an appetite for the desire to please your flesh. You've seen it done, so now you want to go do it. Um, Crystal said it was like it's all for show, and I was grown when I actually realized that. And as men, especially young black men, we're hypersexual, and we porn is normal to us. It's like watching the Animaniacs. Like we just watching something just to be entertained, like for entertainment value, and it's nothing. I remember watching, and then they started adding behind the scenes. Oh my god! You mean like I watched Lord of the Rings? I can like find the details of who was the Hobbit, and I can find the details of what I ain't gonna go into detail, but I remember watching a young lady say, "If I wasn't getting paid, I wouldn't be doing this." Like it was no like pleasure in the situation for her whatsoever.
Right.
It just was like, yeah, this is a job for me. But when you watch the movie and watch her scene, it looked like she was, having fun.
Right.
And I was like, dang, that's crazy.
Right. Before I comment on that, I also would like to know, like sometimes I don't like, outing people, but out of the three of us on this panel, Coco is the one that does not identify with the Christian faith. And yet he just said porn is delusional, it's ridiculous, and it feeds your flesh. I just want, for those who may be watching who are not Christian and think, well, y'all just trying to super purity culture this. He's no.
Super purity, not over here. Not up in here.
Nobody asked for that extra. I've not been influenced either. Like that's his. Like I was like, whoa, that was very accurate.
Chris, when you said like this is so much, I want to talk about this in just a second. I'm going to actually come back to it. But I never forget. I was talking to somebody. I have a bunch of biological brothers, so I was talking to one of my brothers, and he said, "You know what's dumb about porn?" I said, "What?" He was like, "Porn itself." I said, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Well, Lee, most dudes, if they watching porn, they're masturbating." He didn't say masturbating, but he said they're masturbating. And I said, "Okay." He says, "No, think about it. How weird is that?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "If it was two people in the room just having sex and you walked up and just started masturbating beside the two people that's having sex," he was like, "That's really weird." But in your mind, you like, oh, it's different because they're behind a screen or something like that. He was like, that screen gives you a certain amount of anonymity or protection. And sometimes you think like, oh, it's cool. But in your mind, you're imagining either you're one of the participants or you're there. He was like, but if you were there, that would be extra weird. He was like, it's weird.
Yes, that picture, painting it in that picture is hilarious, but also sad at the same time. If I'm in a room and somebody walk in and start doing weird stuff, I'm gonna stop what I'm doing and get the F out, get that F out the pool, man. Like, what's going on?
Right.
But, and I'm not gonna walk in a room with two people and be like, oh yeah, like it's funny because Dave Chappelle had a skit like that on the Chappelle show, and Charlie Murphy was playing the character when they all had the one girl. He's sitting in the corner like doing that while the guy and the girl there, like it was funny in that aspect because I think most of us think like that's so outlandish. But when you paint it in that picture, like when you watch porn, that's literally like, just say if you got transported into the room where you're at, are you going to stand there and be sitting there with your junk in your hand or doing whatever, or even the female pleasure yourself? Like, no.
Right.
And I think that speaks to what I said earlier about deconstructing things and not being so, what is it? Not being puppets. Like not just following, but actually thinking and being intentional about what you expose yourself to and also what you engage in. I just think it's really different if you like what kind of mind put together put together pornography, understanding that it could be exposed to children.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm sorry to because I want to get back to what Chris and even Darnell said, because we have some people making some great comments. So I'm going to hit 3 comments because I even see M made a comment. Shout out to M, our faithful listener. It says, I will say this: beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Porn shapes the individual that already has a preconceived ideal. Then, on the other hand, it can instruct. So here's the thing. That is kind of what both Coco and Chris was just talking about. What porn does is it warps what is natural and it perverts it so that you become ashamed of the feelings that you have that are actually natural. That's what's so dark about it. For us, I want to speak from a biblical perspective. In Genesis, I believe it's 1:28, where God says, make man and women in his own image. And he says, be fruitful and multiply. And then he later on starts talking about, and the two will become one flesh, right? So from a Christian perspective, sex is for covenant, right? It's for covenant, the covenant of marriage, right? But the act of sex itself is it's emotional, meaning intimate with the actual person, right? And I remember someone saying intimacy is kind of like into me see. I'm allowing you to see me in a vulnerable state, right? So it's emotional, it's physical. Actually, the act of itself is physical, and then it's actually spiritual. That's when the covenant comes in, and it's supposed to represent the unity. Now, the fact that that is how the Lord uses for us to populate the world, that's a beautiful thing, and it is also part of it. But it's also for certain relationships. And I remember talking to my students about this, and they were just like, so you saying there's something wrong with sex, miss? I was like, no, it's nothing wrong with sex. Is there something wrong with a wedding dress? And they was like, absolutely not. I said, is there something wrong with a funeral? They said, no. I said, okay. So sex outside of from a Christian perspective, sex outside of the parameters of marriage is like someone wearing a wedding dress to a funeral. It don't match. Both of those things are cool, but you're just not supposed to put them together. You need to have the right circumstances, and God is the one that creates the parameters for those particular boundaries. And outside of that, it has huge consequences and ramifications. And we had this sexual revolution that began in the 60s. And what began to happen was people actually thought, and it started actually before the 60s, but people actually began to think that the more we talk about sex, the more we make in this purity culture, which is not good, by the way, purity culture, the more we combat it. And the way we combat it is by pumping sex. And recent studies are showing that casual sex and cavalierly approaching sex is actually damaging to individual psyche. These are secular, non-spiritual publications that are admitting these facts. So I agree with what Chris said. And speaking of Chris, can you read this while I'll go to M's statement?
It makes you try and mimic what you see to please your spouse. Most of that stuff being painful to the other party that you see on them on the videos, but they don't show that. Yeah, I agree.
Oh,
It
did you sorry, go ahead, Chris.
it creates unrealistic expectations. So when, like realistic, that's why honestly the question was your first experience and like neutral or negative. I think it depends on what framework you had to compare it to, like what you were expecting, like what was your expectation coming to it. Yeah, how many people have negative experiences because you thought it was supposed to match the movie you watched?
Mm-hmm. Cole, can you read this one?
Shout out to M. I watched a documentary on a porn star and how it ruined her life. How many abortions she had to have, how it ruined her body, and how she could never recover physically, emotionally afterwards. Those are the hidden things that happen, like the collateral damage that comes along with it, along with the STDs, along with not being able to have a social life because you're this person that people know from this thing. There's a lot of things that are connected to it as far as just the porn thing that people don't really talk about. And when old boy spoke about being painful, that's what I saw in the bonus footage when that young lady said, "I'm only here for the money." Like, she was not having a good time at all. But watching it, she definitely put on her happy face.
Right. And I think that just statistically speaking, the average child in America has seen porn by the age of 8. And it's also important to note that the average person in the porn industry has herpes. Like, it's just like a thing. Like, it's just you just know you're just gonna get it. Like, everybody's just like, oh, you'll get herpes. It's like, it just is what it is. And I think that and this is no shade to people who have gotten herpes, because some people have got, let me be clear, I'm not shaming anybody in any situation. Some people have gotten herpes from their partner cheating on them, and they're in a God covenantal relationship. So I'm not going to be one of the individuals that try to shame people for that. And I think, yes, 8 is the age. And I would agree that is sad. And I think that it's also important to note that the psychological impact of porn on the user is, okay, really quick. So the way porn is kind of set up is on devices, right? On devices. If you're young, the young person that sees it, they actually stumble onto it, most of them. And the way that they stumble onto it, it kind of stirs up something. The Bible says, and I believe it's Song of Songs, do not stir up love before it's time, right? So something gets incited in this young person. And then what do they want to do? They're going to want to go and look for more. Now, the way the algorithm works, now this is important. The way the algorithm works is, if a kid finds out that on the hub, right, on the famous site, the hub, right, if they just find out, I'm just going to type that up. The way that the algorithm works is the most looked at thing is what pops up first. Sometimes people pay to have their thing as the first looked at thing. As an adult, you as adults, when you're after the prefrontal cortex is developed, so after 25 and up, and even into 20s, you're kind of thinking, okay, I think I know what I may want to like sexually. So those are the things that people literally go search for when they go. The pop-up stuff, people don't even pay that any mind. It's like, I'm going to look at this. When you're young and impressionable, the thing that pops up in your mind literally creates neural pathways that hardwires young people's brain to like whatever popped up. The first things that are popping up now is violent porn, where people literally are getting punched in the face and they're bleeding in the act of sex. So it not only does it promote sex, it promotes violent sex with your partner. Now you have young people who don't even know how to search out a thing. They're already enticed. And then that's the first thing that pops up. That is creating, from a psychological pathway, from a psychological perspective, neural pathways that are bending younger generations towards more predatory, more violent sexual acts. Yes. You heard it right, Big Nate. Yes.
And just to clarify, 8 is typically third grade. So think about third graders. Most third grade classrooms are crazy.
Yeah, no, I don't want to think about that. Sorry.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
And you don't want to think about that why, Co.
we know.
Right. Right. When any of us have loved ones, be it children, nieces, or whatever, I think it's important that we look at children who are the age of where some of these acts begin to take place, especially for those who are traumatized. Like one of the things that I went through when I was going through therapy and recovering from being sexually abused was one of the homework assignments was to look at a young person. And I'm not sexually at all. Let me explain. When you are sexually abused, a part of your brain crystallizes. And even as an adult, you can look back with an adult mind and at the same time as a child and think, what did I do? This was my fault. And if you are an accuser of a child, if you're somebody who's bent to being oppositional, what can happen is you can say, okay, this was this young person's fault. They were fast, they were whatever. So what my therapist did was she said, how old were you when it started? And I told her the age. She said, do you know of any young person that's that age? And I thought about it. And she said, next time you're around them, look at them. Ask yourself, could that young person have brought it on themselves? And I think that that is something that I would highly encourage survivors to do, because the release that came from that is like, oh wow, it wasn't my fault. Now, even though I knew it wasn't my fault here, there's a big difference between the head and the heart. So I think that's really, really important. I think that's really important.
And I just want to highlight another point too, like how quick we are to criminalize our youth for deviant behaviors. That's what they're called. Criminalize our youth for deviant behaviors when they being exposed to all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's no, if a toddler starts doing certain things, automatically you think, oh, well, there must be something going on in the home. This child needs to be protected. But after a certain age, there is no need to protect them. There is deviant behavior. But I'm listening to what you're saying about how what's popping up. It's violent porn, and then but after what 10, I think it's deviant behavior.
Yeah.
I want to understand, like
at least in the state of Pennsylvania, and after the age of 10.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Crystal. And this is like a whole nother show wrapped into this little part right here. Yes, we do go extra hard to protect toddlers. One of the reasons is why, because we don't feel like they have the language to fully communicate. Once we feel like our children can communicate, we're just like, oh yeah, they'll tell me if anything is wrong. We've all been kids at some point in time, and
Right.
we've all held on to stuff that we probably should have talked about. And if it wasn't someone putting pressure on us, or just us feeling like we might have got blamed for something that we didn't do, like it's not as an adult, logically we say, yeah, I teach my kid and I talk to my kid and I know my kid, but you don't, because it's not that simple. Like,
right.
Just like we have an internal conflict as an adult on a daily basis, how you think that 7 or 8-year-old is going through life still trying to figure out being a 7 or 8-year-old?
Right.
You got a team of people telling them what to do.
Right.
And they're taught to obey from infancy. So now they're just trying to process and everything gets lost in there. So yeah.
Right. Right. And to the parents, don't beat yourself up for the things that you have missed. And I am not a parent. My mom came over today and I was like, Mom, I love you. I was like, it must be like really, like, I think about what it must be like to be a parent. It's like, it must be awesome. And then the moment I said it, I was like, and petrifying and rewarding. And like, so I say that to say there is a certain amount of guilt. There is a certain amount of guilt that good parents carry with them. And I can't put into why, but they are like, they're always looking for where they could have did better. They're never really satisfied. Yeah. They're never really satisfied. And I remember watching this movie called Courageous. It's about like dads and fathers, and one of the heroes was this black father who was a cop. And I remember thinking like, yo, he was good, he was great. But even in the movie, he was still broken about how he still saw where he fell short. And in my mind, he was awesome. But he was just like, nah, I dropped the ball. So yeah, parents, don't beat yourself up. Don't. And I pray that the Lord will redeem time. All right. Oh, G in the house. G coming in from G is texting us, folks, from Honolulu, Hawaii. All right. Shout out to G, who says, we never talked because we always thought we would get in trouble for telling. That's the thing. That's the thing. Children are afraid. And so I'm going to speak again from a Christian perspective. Children are born in a human covenant with the Lord. Are born in covenant with the Lord, which is part of the reason why Jesus says, woe to the man that causes any one of these little ones to sin. He said it would be better for them to tie a boulder around their necks and throw themselves into the sea than to make one of these little ones sin. So I say that to say, what happens when a child is sinned against sexually is part of the reason why it's such a egregious sin is because it makes God unsafe. It makes God unsafe. So, and when God is unsafe, whether we realize it or not, nobody is safe. All right, Cole, did you want to read some of these other points?
I reckon I do.
All right.
I've seen porn is not it's not really too different than my actual sexual experience. I might have learned a few things as far as sex positions. Sir, ma'am, call us. We need to talk. Like
you think that's cat, as they say?
Straight cat.
Okay, which means they're lying.
Absolutely. Porn makes men and women appear to have automatic chemistry, orgasm, and attractions. I don't know how that went here. In the real world, when it doesn't work out like the video, you feel inadequate as a mate or spouse. Not to mention, porn makes men and women appear extra sensual and salacious. Is that
yes, yeah, he probably ran out of space or characters. Yeah, extra salacious. I think porn also makes you a consumer of sex. It makes you sexually selfish. It's all about you and what this means to you. And that's not the purpose of sex. Not healthy sex.
It's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
All right. You want to read this one?
The younger the age of the child exposed to the porn, the more warped their idea of sexuality.
I think that's true.
I agree with that. Yes.
This person said, I believe you can.
I'm not a fan of porn. I think it's addictive and similar to a drug, and that you can become desensitized to it and need more and more extreme versions of it to remain stimulated. Also creates unrealistic views of sex and overexposes people to sexual content.
Mm-hmm.
Very valid points.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go to the next question now. This is the thing. Who do you think enjoys sex more, folks? These are your options. Heterosexual women, heterosexual men, members of the LGBTQIA community. So 20% said heterosexual women, 61% said heterosexual men, and 18%, almost the same amount for women, said individuals in the LGBTQIA community. Cole or Chris, did you want to share your feelings on that? And what do you all think in the chat?
I think this is another example of how culture has influenced. I think we live in a culture that has historically been male dominated. I think more than, like even greater than who enjoys it more is who is who is it for more, who should enjoy it more. Some cultures believe men should enjoy it more,
Mm.
that the woman is just for the man's pleasure. um, so I'm not surprised at all by that number, at all surprised by that number. um,
Those who are watching, do y'all agree with that number? Do y'all agree that heterosexual men enjoy sex the most out of everyone else? Go ahead, Cole.
I don't agree that it's true. I just think that it's accurate that they picked that number. I don't agree that it's true.
Yes,
Why?
I agree with that last statement. I don't think that heterosexual men enjoy it more. I think that's the perception of who's supposed to enjoy it more. Um, I think the hardest part is we don't have enough conversations with our partners, and as men, we're not taught to be vulnerable in the aspect of learning to please our partner. She gonna like what I give her. That's like the standard operating procedures for a man. But I think, from my experiences, I think women enjoy sex just as much as we do. And if you're doing it the right way, then everyone should have a good time. When I looked at this question, I automatically thought that the members of the community, because they just be like all over the place. Like, in my own personal opinion, I'm like, because they try stuff and they tried this and tried that. I'm thinking like they probably have to like enjoy it more because they're more limitless than heterosexual people are. We're typically sticking to what it is we got going on, where they done stumbled across probably something that they didn't even know was pleasurable because they're willing to try some things. And then some of it is because they was forced into certain situations, but that's a whole different conversation for another day.
Mm. So I see Cabrina said no, she doesn't think that heterosexual men enjoy sex more. She says she knows women who like it more than men. Um, I would say this. I would say by and large, I do think that heterosexual men enjoy sex more. And not because good evening. The reason why I think that heterosexual men could enjoy sex more is because of the actual anatomy of men. It has nothing to do with the quote unquote quality of sex. And I'm be put on my mature therapist hat right now. It has nothing to do with the quality of sex. It has really a lot to do with the fact that the penis itself is a gland with a lot of nerve endings that typically the act of sex is over once the male climaxes or ejaculates. Therefore, a lot of it is based around that particular act. To Cole's point earlier, individuals, and to what I said before, and the act of healthy sex, that is not the aim, is not you. But Cole even said when most guys are taught they're going to get what I give her. It's about me getting what I want. And I think because that is the mentality, boom, that's what happens. I was reading information, even studying for this and thinking of how to approach this. There's so many gaps and climaxes and things like that. There are so many aspects of it that is a big difference between men and women that it can be actually discouraging for some men to hear that. Like men do quote unquote fake it, but it's nowhere near the amount of times that women do. And part of the reason for that is because women are neutral and they're not being asked those questions that Cole kind of spoke to. All right, so I'm getting ready to.
I think it's really good that you highlighted the physicality of it. Like, I think that we forget that we are made, like we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Like every part of our physical framework has a purpose. And I think when we I don't want to say weaponized because I don't think it's, well, in some ways it is weaponized, but when we make our anatomy for our pleasure, like when we make the when we take it away from its original design, we don't think about how we were fashioned. And when I think about what you just said, it makes me think, well, it makes a lot of sense that the man would need to be pleased in order to fertilize, the egg and make a baby. Like when you think about it being about reproduction, that would need to happen. So I think having those kind of healthy talks about just how we're made, how we're wired, how we are physically framed is important.
Mm. And this person said, I have no idea. I've never enjoyed sex. If I if I had to guess, I'd say men enjoy the act of sex more because of how their bodies are designed. That's literally what I just said. All right, great, move on. Do you think, matter of fact, Cole, read this one?
Do you think that music, the media, or social media play a role in how people view sex?
So here's the thing. Nobody said
Barely,
nobody said
but
barely.
barely nobody. Yes, somewhat at 31%. Yes, definitely. Have some 56%, and no, rounding it out at 11%.
Right. So what do y'all think in the chat, Cole? What do you think about that?
Uh it's weird that no one said barely, but I tend to agree with yes, definitely, because especially in the music in our urban communities, we are over sexualized beings, and the women are, woo, since we had what was it called, like MTV late night, no, BET Uncut. That's what it was called. After midnight, they started showing all the videos with the
I don't
girls
know. I ain't have cable.
and stuff like that. I didn't, but I spent the night at a friend's house, and BET Uncut was softcore porn, basically, with the clothes on and all the music videos with girls in bikini thongs. Because back then, that wasn't something that was shown on TV like it is now. So you had artists make special videos. I remember Nelly caught flack for swiping the credit
Swiping a credit card down the girl's buttocks.
Yeah, it was a transaction. Yeah. But yeah, so the crazy thing is social media is probably now the biggest contributor to how people view sex, because um, we all tend to want instant gratification at some point. All of us on this panel, there's something that we want to happen right instantaneously to gratify us. Like, that's not wrong. That's just how it is. Um, Social media, there's whatever platform. I think Facebook is probably the most censored and most family centric, even though it's not. When you get into Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, you can pretty much. I know on Twitter you can go find anything on Twitter. Like Twitter is like just a dark place. So you go in there and you can see the different things, and the algorithms feed you what they think you want to see. Like, so it's all programming. So social media has made it easier to force feed us programming based upon the data that they collect from us while we're scrolling, clicking, liking, and honestly yells at me all the time when I send her a funny video or something and it's from a page that might not be the most upstanding. I'm not looking at the page because my social media is all over the place. I follow girls in bikinis. Yes, I do. I follow preachers and pastors that are giving motivational quotes. Yes, I do. I follow sports. I follow everything. Like, it's all like I'm all over the place. My social media feed is the world. Like, whatever's going on in the world, you can probably find on my social media. So I'll send her a page and it's somebody tripping over something or whatever the case may be. First, she yells at me because she says it's not funny. Why do you think that's funny? Like, what's wrong with you?
I don't
She
think
calls
people
me
tripping
laughing.
and falling is
She
funny.
calls me not laughing at the video, but laughing at me and say, what's wrong with you? Like, why do you keep sending me these things and you think it's funny? And you think it's hilarious. And I'm hysterical when she calls me because it is hilarious to me. And then her response is hilarious. And then she goes on to say, where are you getting this stuff from? You're screwing up my algorithm because now they're sending me this, and that. I don't want to see this. And I'm like, I don't know. So I think social media plays a bigger role than we're willing to acknowledge out of all of the things listed. But the collective, I think, yes, the collective definitely plays a role in how people view sex, because we started off seeing, going back to what Crystal said, when we watched TV in the 1700s, there was two separate beds, and then we graduated to Claire and Heathcliff being in one bed, and now the people are like on the beach or in the living room, and it's like go move, and this is network TV, this isn't even cable. So I think that the collective has moved towards the fact that sex sells and sexuality sells, and all of the forms of entertainment are pushing that wherever we find it. So yes.
Yeah, and there's a huge correlation. Recently, there's been a number of psychological journals that have been talking about the correlation not only between mental health of teenagers, like suicidality and like Instagram, but also gender dysphoria amongst girls, specifically amongst young teenage girls. The numbers are like ridiculous, and in the way that they're even being engaged, they're being taught to or coached or coaxed into binding. For those who don't know what that is, that's when a female wraps up her breasts to make her chest look flat. There are all kinds of sites that promote that. When a young person, you have to remember, young people are still trying to figure themselves out. And before they can figure themselves out, you have people with agendas trying to put them into particular categories. I remember I Am Jazz. Remember I Am Jazz is the story of the transgender person who was biologically male, and it was a young person and was transitioning into being a female, and they actually started on hormone replacement therapy at an age that was so young that when Jazz was I want to say in their early teens, Jazz couldn't even get sexual reassignment surgery, because what the puberty blockers did was it prevented their natural penis from growing. And so therefore they didn't even have the skin to make a vaginal opening for this person who was going through this. And all of that is being recorded and pumped out and sent to young people as well. And I think that we have to look at the impact of what a lot of these things are saying. You have stuff like the standards are just, the standards are already telling people that it's okay for men to be promiscuous. But now they're saying, women, in order to get your power back, now you got to be, snatch his soul with your vagina. Like, that's literally what a song said. I'm going to snatch his soul. And as a Christian, I'm like, the blood of Jesus. Like, you know what I mean? Whereas a lot of people, when you're not saved, it's like, well, I want that. I want somebody to snatch my soul. And
what
it's like,
song is this? What's the artist's name so I can do some market research?
no. It's the artist's name is Romans 1. That's
I'm familiar with this artist. I don't remember that part either.
Romans 1. But no, seriously, like there are things, and just going back when we talked about social media, look at, we showed before how TikTok was actually designed and how it's being put in the West. So in the East, in China, where it actually was created, I believe it was created in China, they banned it in India. And in part because once you put TikTok on your device, it has access to your everything. So they banned it in India because the Indian government didn't trust the Chinese government, but whatever. And in China, you have this social score, which is important in life, because China's a honor culture. So if you do things that are honorable, it's seen as a good thing. So on TikTok, it'll have all these different acts of people doing kind stuff, or like a young person doing something that is helping out humanity, or doing something to greater the good of their particular culture. And yet that same app is used for us to do mind-numbing things to extra sexual songs. Have you ever listened to some of these songs? Like, I'm like, what? And the dance don't even go with the song. It's like a little kid doing a dance, and then you listen to the song. It's like, this song is from hell. And then
Yes.
it's bananas. It's bananas. It's bananas.
Yes. And again, it goes back to again, culture. When we think about how the majority influence has always influenced us, like now it's getting morally offensive to certain people, but it's always influenced us. Misogyny was cultural. Like it was typical for the woman, and hence now why we have women taking back their power by trying to be worse than men in a sense. I don't understand that. Why can't like it just doesn't make sense. So like,
I just want to say this: you becoming a hoe does not unhoify a hoe. Okay.
So the hoes ain't winning?
The whole, despite what Jasmine Sullivan says, these hoes ain't winning. Male or female hoes ain't winning. And
Wait.
for those, go ahead, Cole.
Wait, so there's male hoes and female hoes?
Oh yes.
What?
Hoe don't have no pics. Hoe is a hoe is a hoe is a hoe. However, when we're taught what hoes are, we get a lot of female images. And that's not the case. I think I've said this before. I don't think men are taught to value their body enough. I think that men should not be taught to get rid of their virginity. I remember somebody said that, like, and we're going to talk about that. Like, and I think that was one of the responses in the surveys when I was reviewing it earlier. Like, men are taught to give up their virginity the moment they realize they have it. And here's the thing. Here's the setup. Here's the predatory setup. So society says, hey, you're not a man. You got to get rid of your virginity. And then the young lady that you use to get rid of your virginity, she's now a means to an end, because now you're taught to value a virgin for you to be with. So you just used her to discard, like, thank you, bang, hash mark, and I'm keeping it moving. And that is a setup for a sick society. And that's what we have. And then you couple that with the young girl listening to big face, then make body, yada, 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 legs and hips and body. This is when the world is going bananas.
Yo, I was at an event recently, and I'm not lying to you guys. At some point, I felt like my ears were being molested. Like my ears were being violated. I legit was like, you know how like you get that feeling when somebody does something that's wrong. It's like, oh no, like I couldn't even drown it out. I just don't understand why are we willing to ask ourselves why? Why does that give you any pleasure? Why does that give you any type of joy or experience or positive experience? Like, are we just willing to ask ourselves why?
And in addition to why, because sometimes it could be something as simple as because it feels good. Like there's a saying Calvinists have: if your sin doesn't feel good, you ain't doing it right, right? So it could just be that it's pleasurable, but is it beneficial? In the end, is it beneficial? And when I talk to young people about sex, I talk to them about what's healthy versus what's unhealthy. Because I can't give them, and the Bible says in Corinthians, and I can't give them that. They're not going to receive that. But I can talk about the correlation between your heart. I can say, above all things, guard your heart, for it springs the issues of life. And when you have sex, you actually release dopamine, which causes you to bond with this individual. And the reason why young ladies get more caught up than young guys is because guys have higher testosterone, which is like a kill switch for the dopamine that they're feeling when they're attracted to this person. But catch 22, in the end, when guys want to finally, quote unquote, settle down with a young lady because they've created so many shattered neural pathways with women along the way, they literally cannot settle down and are more prone to cheat and have horrible relationships with women as a result of the trail of bodies that they had before. Now, I could say that. And literally show why that's the case and empirically and things like that. And I think that that's why it's important that how we frame certain things is extremely important. So I'm going to read this and then we're going to move on. Cabrina says, social media has changed the view on a lot of things we once were ashamed of. It makes it okay today. And that's so true. That's so true. All right. I'm going to go down a bit further. Cole, did you read the last? Oh, yeah, you read the last one. I'll read this one. Do you think that society equally values male and female virginity? 8% said yes. 86% said no. Women's virginity is valued more. And 5% said no, men's virginity is valued more. What do y'all think about that? How about in the chat? What do y'all think about that, chat? And what do y'all think about that, co-host?
It's interesting. I think women's virginity is valued more because of all the stuff we just discussed. Like you like you said, you use a woman to get rid of your virginity, then you go try to find a virgin to be with, and that's who you want to marry and build your life with because she's quote unquote pure and untouched. But you run around here trying to touch we run around here as men trying to touch everything. And even the ones who are untouched, they're like the prize. And not even for what I just said, not marrying and building life with, it's so you can touch them. So you can say you were the first. So I mean, I conquered this mountain.
Yep.
It's the whole Columbus discovered America situation. It's like, what are you doing? So
wow.
Right, I agree. I think it makes it about conquering on both. But here's the thing: current day, I think it goes both ways. I don't think we
I agree.
value. I don't think we value a virginity equally as a society. And there was a time where I would say the female's virginity was valued more, but I think current day, I think men and women leaves just as much of a trail of bodies. And when it's time for marriage, the man often does want a virgin, and the woman wants someone who's going to be committed and monogamous and faithful.
I think also people don't. What do y'all think in the chat? Thank you. And what do y'all think? Do y'all think society values to the Christian men that are watching? I know we had Dre from Harrison Family Values and a couple of other people. Nate, do y'all know of any sermons or anyone that teaches how men should value their own virginity? And men, if you have sons, are you teaching your sons to value their virginity as much as you're teaching your daughters, if you have daughters? I think about that. Yeah, what do y'all think about that if you're watching? If not, and you could totally disagree too. If someone has a descending view from what it is that I'm saying or we're saying, you can totally engage with that too. Because you the man. Because you the man, Dre. That's why you speak on it often. Because you're the man. For real. Like, I think a lot of times men don't. I literally, in college, I was asking for sermon series. I know of so many sermon series where, you see this? Value their virginity and their seed. I know that's right. I know so many sermons that talk about beautiful, chaste virgin, and what comes to mind is automatically a woman. Automatically a woman is what comes to mind. But I think it stands for something in the book of Revelations, where it mentions how it says a special group of men, and it says they will be virgins, and it specifically says male virgins. And I said, I know that. Come on, God. Come on. He said, you plant seed in soil that you can cultivate. Cultivation begins with marriage. That's right. That's right. I agree with that.
I think we're going to get into this a little bit later, but I would say to answer your question, I don't know that I hear virginity amongst men or chasteness amongst men in particular. I will say there is a purity movement that is
mm,
um, a little delusional, like
mm.
like a little bit extreme.
What do you
Like
mean when you say that?
I've heard it said that
Like you got to
Christians,
give side hugs.
you guys, Christians who have remained chaste or abstinent, that have submitted to this type of culture and thinking, um, carry it into their marriage, and they see the act of sex as a bad thing.
Mm,
And it's hard to enter into that type of intimacy with their spouses because it's been taught in an unhealthy way.
mm,
So I think that I think it is necessary to have healthy conversations about purity and what purity is, um, and a healthy teaching about purity and what purity is, that we don't belong to ourselves, that we
mm,
were made as physical beings. We have been gifted the gift of relations, of sex, under the proper boundaries, and under those boundaries it is good. It's not altogether bad. And I think that the the church in America, at least in America, in an attempt to combat the culture in America, have gone to an extreme that's
mm.
unhealthy.
Okay. Well, Cole, I'm just gonna tell me if one of these you want to talk about, because I want to get to. It says at what age should someone be allowed to have sex? We had one individual say when they've reached puberty. I think that's horribly disgusting. That's me. Um,
Very, very disgusting. Because puberty, someone earlier said in a conversation about sex, they had their period at 9. So
right.
tell me a 9-year-old should be able to get the fuck out.
Sorry about the beep, folks.
Listen, I apologize. I'm trying to be better. I don't want to offend anybody. If I offend you, I'm sorry and I love you.
But yeah, that's a father. Like, yeah, get out of here. One thing that made me happy is that everyone said that sex should be consensual.
But check this out. Like,
Now, come on, go ahead,
check this
go.
out. I have a daughter who's close to being 9. It ain't no way in anything you're going to tell me that that child is ready for anything because of her body. Like, no, like we can't control that. We don't know when that's going to happen or how it's going to happen. So you try, no, and no, not at all.
Mm.
No,
Which
I know,
goes back,
I know Lee got bail money. That's all I'm saying.
I
That's all.
do.
right, right. Which goes back to my point earlier about talking about how we were created and why we were created and how we're fashioned. The reason why puberty, people often ask, why are you pubescent so early? Because your body is practicing what it is going to engage in. Why do girls get periods? Because your body is monthly training itself for birth, for contractions, for what happens when you give life, like when you birth life. Like I think we're so self-centered sometimes. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I can be self-centered too. We're so self-centered sometimes we think that our bodies belong to us and like we fashion them, we control them. No, there actually is a design, a divine design.
Yep. And we also have periods because Eve. All right. Um,
That dang woman.
uh, Harrison, Dre said he got bail money and an alibi. I know that's right.
Seriously, yep, exactly. You fail to plan, you plan to fail. Whatever that saying goes. Prize, bail money, let's get it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I definitely do. No, I don't know what you're talking about. He was here. We were playing backgammon.
Backgammon. Yo, I got backgammon record of the cards.
Backgammon. All right. It says, do you think that the following statement is true? Women give sex to get love, and men give love to get sex. 43% said yes, and 56% said no. Y'all want to comment on that? Either one of you?
There's some truth to that, but let me spin it a little bit. I think the illusion of love is given to get sex more so than actual love. So, I mean, we live in a world where we've been taught that relationships are transactional. And a good friend of mine, he believes that, but that's a whole different subject for another day. So it's kind of like, what is this? What is the goal for this interaction? Like, interaction. I don't think there is a clear cut goal in most instances. There are some people who date intentionally and deliberately, but for the sake of just like hanging out, hooking up, whatever the case may be, you show affection or the illusion of affection to gain intimacy. So I don't think in most cases, I know in most cases from being a guy and being in a situation where I, took a woman out, ordered this, gave her hugs, embraced and all that to get to the end game, which was sex. And then once sex was had, it was like, okay, cool. But then automatically turn everything off. But some stuff might have tailored back or might have just been status quo. And if sex wasn't had anymore, then it's like, okay, new target. So I don't think there was no genuine love given from my own personal experiences in these situations in order to get sex. There was the perception of love given from me to these young ladies to get sex.
Do you think that society teaches men to do that?
Absolutely. I do think so.
Right. Right. I think that it's not real. To what you said, it's not real love that the women are getting. And here's the catch-22. It is real sex that they're giving, though. Like that's the setup. You're giving up real sex for fake love. Like you're getting the short end of the stick. Pause. Did you get that one, Crystal? All right.
I don't even know. But I will say to this question, I would say I don't get the puzzles until later. Y'all already knew that. So, but to this question, I think that this is also a reflection of culture and stereotypes. I will say when you talking to young women, like especially teenage girls, um, this is a lot of what I see. I think the culture that is being encouraged now is very different. Like again, amongst what I think the culture being encouraged amongst women, honestly, to me, is just as vicious. Like, I don't want your love. I want pleasure. I want to keep it moving. Like, So I wonder what this statistic or what the answer to this question would be 10 years from now. Like, is that going to be the case?
I think, if I'm gonna be honest, I think a lot of that is just cap. It's girls who realized that they weren't even getting quality sex from guys, and so they became pimps of themselves in the name of trying to take back some illusion of power. They actually became slaves to what other people said, as well as slaves to certain forms of pleasure. Now, yeah, because there's just statistical data on, like, again, like the orgasm gap and things like that. It's just they lying, and then now they lying to themselves and really believe in the lies. Yeah, so it's just horrible. But I moved on to the next question. It says, would you be in a committed monogamous relationship with someone who was practicing abstinence? Now, I was surprised at this. 68% said yes. Yeah, 6% said yes, but not longer than a year. So, and then one person said yes, but not longer than 6 months. And then you had 23 honest people. I mean, 23% of honest folks that was like, nah. But it's funny because I didn't give the opportunity to look at who of these were females and who were males. I would be interested to know. I probably could dig deeper, but I didn't prepare the data, so I'm not going to do that. But I do think that by and large, it's men, they don't want to wait long, especially if they've already started having sex. And sometimes, even if they have, especially if they haven't had sex, it's like a catch-22 sometimes. All right. So I'm gonna
Yeah, that yes is very surprising. Like,
it's not surprising to me if it's like women, and a lot of these women, a lot of the people that took it, remember I said we had about 68% of the people that took it were women. And I don't think that all of these are women. In fact, I know they're all not, because I looked at some of the individual ones. So I would say out of the 68%, a good 20% of this 68% are actually men. And then most of these are men too, and then some of these are women. So I think that if a man really understands his value, and he understands her value, and he's cultivating, he's trying to bring forth something that is godly, something that is even something that is noble, he's going to be patient, and he's not going to rush it. And please hear what I'm saying. Do not hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that you don't get desires and things like that. I'm saying you are trying to make sure that this person is worthy of your sex. I'm saying, yeah. All right. So this one too. This I just felt like, what? Coco, can you read this?
Excuse me. Does someone's sexual history impact how you value them? We had 59 answers. One person skipped this question. The yeses were 20%, and the no's were 79.6%, almost 80%. That's astounding.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Amazing. Beta. Amazing.
So I think, so to just my perspective of how people answer this question, I think they said no because you don't actually know someone's history. So they're probably like, well, I don't know it, so no. But I think
Sometimes you
that
could tell.
nah,
What?
just literally No, everything I thought I knew, I realized I didn't know. Like,
you can tell there are certain things. How can I say this without being too graphic? There are certain things they might not have had many sexual partners, but based off of certain aspects of people's anatomy, you can tell that something has happened somewhere, sometime. That's all I'm saying. I'm gonna leave that there. Anyway, if you know, you know.
Happened somewhere at some time. But yeah, I think that's the perspective of how people answered it with the no, because they're like, I don't know. Even if we're dating, and you'd be like, oh, I don't know. Say if you say you've been with 5 people, that's doesn't detail your sexual history. That's just that puts a value on the amount of people. It doesn't put a value on the actual sexual experiences.
All right, all right. Can we be honest? Do the people that's watching? We got a couple of people watching right now. Would y'all care if the person you was with was like, yeah, I had 115 bodies in the past? What you going to body yada 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 yada? What are you gonna do? Okay. I want to follow up. What's your follow up question? While we get the follow up question.
I mean, I'm if I'm being honest, wow. Right.
I
Yeah.
agree.
I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to talk about this because, like, on the TV shows, and I don't watch modern TV shows, but on the TV shows, occasionally I'll pay attention and watch them, and like, there's this really like it's so fluid. Like, everything is so fluid. So I think current day, no, people don't care. Like, it's what is it? It's your truth. It's your life. It's your, like, do you like live?
No, but bring it home. Bring it home, Crystal. Don't say what they out there would do. What would you do if
I
you?
was about to answer.
All right, yeah, like you like
I'm
it's just.
gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest. As long as you done with that, no, I don't care. You could have hundreds upon hundreds of bodies. Long as you are done with that and you ready to commit to one body, I don't care.
I think that this was thank you for being honest. Make sure she gets tested before I touched her. Thank you. And I also
that ain't the truth.
and I also think that I tell people all the time, my students like, Miss, but I love them. I said, you better love them all the way to the clinic. You better love them right to the and wait there.
And share the results. If you can be intimate enough to be like, here, this is my results, and let me see your results, then what you doing it for?
I think the average person would care if they had STDs. I think that would be a deal breaker for some people. Just like for some people, that would be a deal breaker if the person couldn't have kids or wasn't childbearing or something like that. For some people, for a lot of people, those are deal breakers. I don't know. I don't. I really don't even know. I know someone who has an amazing testimony of like God turning their life around, and they have a particular STD, and they were praying, and they felt like God said, you know what? They felt like they weren't ever going to find a spouse, and they felt like God was like, I got you. The one you marry will have the same STD. Like, that's what they prayed, and that's what they got. So then they met this person, and they were dating, and everything was going well, and nothing ever happened. They're both, this time they, saved, delivered, and all this other stuff, right? And then the person wanted to really begin to take the relationship to the next level, and they say, you know what? I know this relationship seems like it's going further, but there's something that I want to tell you about me, because I don't want it to go any further if it's not going to be serious. And what I have to tell you is like full of shame. And this person was just like, I already know. And they were just like, what do you mean? And it was like, you're going to tell me you have fill in the blank. And they were just like, how did you know? And it was
No,
like,
you fill in the blank. What you talking about?
and they said what it was. They said, you're going to tell me you have this. And they said,
What it was?
I do. How did you know? And it was like, because I have it too. And the Lord put on my heart that the person that I would be with would have the same thing. And that was it. They've been married like 20 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I mean, obviously that goes without saying. Get tested, do all of that stuff. But
Yes, I care. It's the
Whoa.
short answer.
Shut them coming with the heavy
no,
hitters. Like,
no,
I
no,
know.
no.
M coming with the questions.
like
I'm
Um,
not
what's in your
saying. I'm not
mind?
saying. I'm
do I
saying.
care if they've been with someone of the same sex? Like, what kind of hypocrite do you think I'm going to? No, but I do care.
Hey,
But I do care if they are like, I would have so many questions for anybody. I have so, number one, I'm a questioner, period. So you're gonna get all of the questions I got. Like, that's it. When's the last time? Who was this with? Blah 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 blah. I'm gonna ask those questions. Now, if you're a guy and you're watching, you're like, yo, that's too many questions. Then you're not the one I'm gonna marry. You probably already married anyway. So that's fine. But I'm saying a lot of times people don't like that. They're like, I just leave the past in the past. And I was like, nah, no. Not on certain levels of intimacy, on certain levels of friendship. I want to know. You know what I mean? Like, if we walking past somebody and they give you a look like, hey, hey, Sean. I don't want to be like,
what is wrong with you?
who was there?
What's wrong with you?
Who was there? I want to know. You know what I mean? So I do care if they've been a predator, especially a predator with children, because they're more than likely to reoffend. And I don't. And if they've been delivered and not delivered, right? So yeah, I would. So that's just me. Most guys wouldn't necessarily care in certain situations if the woman has been with other women. In fact, men are taught like that's like a turn on. So they wouldn't necessarily care in certain situations. I'm gonna leave it at that. All right. What is your religious affiliation? We had 4 atheists, 37 Christians, 4 Catholics. We have 4 Muslims, 4 traditional, like cultural religion, that's like Yoruba, right? And then we have 7 others. So those are individuals who, like, I don't want to be defined in any of your particular categories. And this is the last question. So, Christians, religious folk, let's talk. Christians, Muslims, whatever. Does religion impact how people view sex? Yes, and it has a positive impact. Yes, somewhat positive. So we have 6, 20, 9 people says it has a negative impact, and 11 people says it has a somewhat negative impact. And then you had 11 people saying, it doesn't impact how people view sex at all. What say you in the chat? And what say you, my co-host? Does religion impact how you view sex?
I already said what I had to say. I just remember. I remember trying to being a single parent. And for those that don't know my story, I never married. I raised my siblings' children because they passed away. I remember being a single parent and wanting to put, and they were, and it was only boys, and wanting to prepare to talk to them, and just the level of extreme uncomfortability when going to believers, both male and female, about the
Christians.
topic. Yes, the Christians, both male and female, about the topic of sex, about how to talk to your kid about sex, about how to talk to them about abstinence, about even what you should share and what you shouldn't share. I know a number of people didn't agree that I should share with my child what contraceptives were. Where would I want them to learn it from?
Mm,
Where do I want them to go and have this conversation? Because this is the thing. If I don't talk to them, someone will talk to them. Do I really want them to have those types of conversations with someone else? Is that not a part of my mantle and responsibility?
mm,
Um, so I just feel like we create this false sense of purity that isn't necessarily biblical. It's more cultural. And then we get uncomfortable when those parameters are violated or crossed. And that's something that I think we are going to be forced to deal with in the current season, in the current climate, because the things that our kids are being exposed to, the amount of information they take in on a daily basis. I heard it said somewhere that the average human being today takes in the same amount in one day of the same amount of information that someone in the 1700s would have taken in their lifetime.
you want to go? You want to go, Coco? Before I go. All right. So, I think religion does play. Every religion does play a role. I think I'm going to speak from the perspective of Christianity. I think Christianity can be very informed by the world. One of our like foundational verses for honestly speaking is um, stop being conformed, be no longer conformed to the pattern of this world, but be ye renewed by the transformation of your mind. I think the world has put lenses on how we view sex already, and even femininity and masculinity. Um, I challenge people to tell me like all of the scriptures that deal with what it means to be masculine, not
Mm,
male, but masculine and feminine. And I guarantee it will be hard to come up with a worldview that matches what this worldview is. I think a lot of times we fill in the blank with what culture says, and then we use that to as a lens to look at the scriptures. And over the years, it's been very repressive, and at the same time, scripture has been very liberating. Um, in particular, I can only speak for the Bible, has been very liberating. Sexually, the Bible talks about how basically sex is a gift, and between the covenant of marriage, and God gave it as a gift, and He even equipped us with certain aspects of our physical, sexual, reproductive organs that are strictly for pleasure. So I think that that's important to remember too, that we're not to look at sex like it's gross or like it's God, but like it's a gift that we're supposed to steward within the parameters and the covenant of marriage that He has put us in. And it also a great article. I was kind of it's funny. I was looking it up earlier. A great article. Let me see if I can share my screen. Let me see. Give me a second. I might be able to share my screen. Um, uh, I'm just going to go over this really quick. This is from the Gospel Coalition, and I'm just going to go over the main points. You can look it up. The Gospel Coalition. These are 5 surprising things that the Bible says about sex. It's good. Husbands owe it to wives. A lot of times people think it's the other way around. Married couples should have it often. I'm as a therapist, I'm like Christians should be having married Christians should be having healthy quality sexual intercourse. Um, it's not just about kids. It's an expression of love, again, in a covenant and unity. And last but not least, it's not what makes you human. So for those of us who are single, I think it's important for us to remember that in the garden, one of the ways that Satan beguiled Eve is by making her feel like she was missing out and making her feel like, God's keeping something from you. or he's holding back part of his purpose for you. And it's like Jesus didn't have it. Like it lists all of these things. And that's not the case. There's some singleness is a gift. And I think a lot of times we as Christians tend to operate as if singleness is a curse. And it's not. It's a gift. So I think that that's extremely important for us to remember that singleness is a gift and it should be stored well. All right. Anything else before we go?
Honestly, when you say singleness is a gift,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean?
I'm saying that the Bible actually says that God gives some people the gift of singleness
Right.
and other people the gift of marriage. It's not to be meant as a pariah. So we should not use singleness as an insult when it comes to people, nor should we use marriage as the goal of the Christian life. It does not disqualify you for many positions in leadership. I know some people, when they're getting extra like legalistic, they're like, well, you can't be an elder, you can't be. I'm not even getting over that. But because when you look at Jesus, when you look at, never mind. So I think that a lot of times people make singleness out to be and abstinence-based life singleness out to be like some type of insult. Now, don't get me wrong, there are people who are single because they are making unhealthy decisions. And there are people who are in horrible marriages because they have made unhealthy decisions. So the key is to make sure you're choosing healthy decisions. I'm going to share this last piece and then we can end on that note. Coco, did you want to say anything before I share this?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to share this last piece. It's on Jordan Peterson. I'm not a fan of his, but I think a lot of people I'm not a big fan of his. I think he says a lot of things that have great points. He's a psychologist that became famous on his stance with pronouns. He used to be looked up in the manosphere red pill world until he started holding people accountable. He's not a Christian. This is part of the reason why I actually chose him. And he says a lot of things that I would agree with and some things that I don't. But I'm just going to share this because it's really good empirical data that he's going to talk about. Can somebody type fair use in the comments or something so I can pull it up? You're going to hear an echo at first and then you won't hear echo. And let me know, Chris, in about 3 seconds, give me the thumbs up if you can hear it. All right. You're going to hear echo at first.
Steve A. has the first question. How can we know the difference between unhealthy repression and healthy self-restraint of sexuality? Well, I would say, part of what constitutes ethics, let's say, first of all, let's think about ethics to begin with. So what's the point of conducting your life ethically? The answer to that isn't so that you follow the proper rules precisely. The answer to that is so that you balance your life so that it's as productive and meaningful as it can possibly be. And that would be productive and meaningful for you with any luck, but also for people around you. That would even be better. And for you now and next week and into the future. So it's sort of a variation of the philosopher Immanuel Kant's moral dictum, which was act such that your action becomes a moral universal, something like that. Although I think that it's better phrased across time and across people like that. So when you're thinking about an ethic that has to do with any fundamental motivation like sexuality, you have to think about it in the context of the rest of your life. The question is whether or not, what did I say? What did I read at one point that I really liked with regards to sexuality? Who's in control? That's the issue. Is it you or is it the sexuality that's in control? Have you integrated your sexual life into the rest of your life so that the whole thing makes a harmonious balance? And are you in charge or is it in charge, so to speak? Because if you're not in charge with that harmonious balance, then things are going to waver wildly out of control and you're going to find yourself in dreadful trouble. That happens whenever any given drive or maybe really any given value predominates to the exclusion of all else. Now, it seems to me that sexuality is best handled within the confines of a relationship. That's the classic ethical solution to the problem. It's because sexuality brings with it a tremendous amount of responsibility. Now, people don't like to think that, especially people who I would say are low in conscientiousness, let's say, or high in impulsivity. It's easy for people to believe in what would you call it, casual sex, which is not something that I think exists, because I don't think you can divorce sex from its sociological or political or economic or psychological consequences. And I would say the endless scandals that have plagued the United States in particular in the last year with regards to sexual behavior are proof positive that there's no such thing as casual sex. I think the reason for that is that the consequences of sex are too dramatic. It's not just pregnancy and disease, let's say, which are both as dramatic as consequences can be in life, but also the fact that there's no disentangling sexual behavior from emotional behavior. Or maybe you could say even worse, if you try to disentangle your sexual behavior from your emotional behavior, then I think what happens is that you end up cold and cynical. I mean, if you're, let's say, if you're a serial, if you have a lot of one-night stands and a lot of casual partners, then first of all, there's not much discrimination between one partner and the other. And so in some sense, you're in a loop and just repeating the same act over and over. But you can't, there's nothing deep about it. There's nothing that enables you to establish a relationship with another person. And I think that I think that you corrupt your soul in that way, and that you hurt yourself across time. And of course, you're going to hurt other people as well. So I'm not a big admirer of the casual sex idea. I think it's a demented adolescence fantasy, fundamentally. It just doesn't work out in the real world. Now, healthy self-restraint, well, with regards to sexuality, it's the same with everything else, is that there's the necessity to forego immediate gratification for the purpose of medium to long-term thriving, let's say. So if your sexuality is integrated in an ethic that encompasses the rest of your life, and if it serves that ethic, then I would say it's properly restrained. If it's unhealthily repressed, well, then you're angry and bitter and resentful and cursing the opposite sex, or perhaps the same sex if you happen to be gay, for failing to recognize your particular form of sexual, what would you call, attractiveness. I think resentment and anger are a good indication that there's something wrong with the manner in which your sexuality is restrained. So hopefully that's a decent answer.
Well, on that note, thank you all for tuning in. We're going to take we have one more show for the end of the season. I'm probably going to do a couple of lives in collaboration with folks. Shout out to G, who is actually in Honolulu. I'm going to post the link where you can support his brother, who is in the Paralympics. His brother, actually, they're from Philly. His brother moved out to California, got into a horrible motorcycle accident, and lost his leg. He didn't surrender to not having a leg. This brother picked up surfing. He's a Black brother who picked up surfing, and I think he's in his second Paralympics. His story is amazing. I'm going to post a link to that in the chat. And again, thank you all for coming out. Jay, Coach Jay, hope you feel better. Everybody else, I think that was a good note to end on. As we always say, honestly speaking, love God, love your neighbor, and take care of yourself. Peace.